And welcome back. The patch has just dropped and I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, and if you like this kind of thing, make sure to let me know, because I will be doing these every patch. And if you don't like that, if you don't want that at all because you think it's subtract from the other content, then tell me to piss off with it. But it's just not a substitute, it's an addition to what I already do. And I want to look at all the vehicles. Are they viable? Are they not viable? I'm going to be giving you my first impressions. I have been looking at the stats of the vehicles in the files for a little bit now to kind of get this grasp on what's different and what's new. And can I compare it to the other vehicle that I'm comparing it to? So I did my research here. I didn't fly everything out as much as I normally do, but it's mostly first impressions, looking at the statistics and not at this stat card because it's absolutely bogus. And what I want to look at is, are the planes viable? What are the camos on it? Because you probably can't see it if you are just previewing it. And what are the loadouts? And of course, my general sense of how do you play them. Starting off, we have the F4E. But instead it's a J. It's almost the exact same plane. It has slightly stronger engines. It also has a little bit extra fuel, making it a little bit heavier. And it has, of course, the pulse Doppler radar that America needed so much. You also got a few new weapon systems, which will be the main difference of this plane. You got AIM-9Gs, you got AIM-7Fs, and you got the gun pod that the A4E and the A4B have. So the AIM-7Fs, what makes it different over the AIM-7E2? Main thing will be range and the speed of it. It's a little bit slower, it's a little bit less maneuverable, but it has a lot more range. And the reason it's so slow and the reason it turns a little bit less is because it just carries a lot more fuel. And that's going to be the main difference here. AIM-9G, kind of the same. We all know the missiles, long range, less pull than the AIM-9Js. But in general, this plane looks to be more of a hanging back kind of plane, shooting missiles at a range and just not going into the furball. You're not an F5E, you're not an F4E, and you do lack the Vulcan, which will slow you down as well if you bring the gun. And if you don't bring it, then you're gonna be a little bit gimped and you really just have to hang back. It's more going to be of a support plane, a sniper plane, so to speak. And a few of these in your team will do wonders to your team. A full team of them, I think, is not going to be very great, and that's simply because of the AIM-9Gs, as well as the fact that you lack the Vulcan. We have to see how this is going to play out and how it works in the team play. And of course, you are playing with randoms here most of the time. So we really just have to wait and see. But the differences are pretty clean, pretty dry. Not much changes here on the F4E chassis, but the missile systems here and the radar itself are the biggest things that change here. Customization, we got 4 camos. We got the standard one that you can probably see when you preview it. We got the black one. We got the Blue Angels one, which is very surprisingly blue. And we got the Chargers one, which has some red, black and grey on the vehicle. Post commentary coming in clutch, because I just forgot the loadouts. And you can see here, it has quite a few options. It's just as bad as the other ones, really. I'm going to be scrolling through this very slowly. I'm not going to be naming all these things. You can pause it, you can scroll through it, and you can read the things yourself. There's too much stuff here for me to cover all at once without boring everyone to death. Next up will be the F105D Thunder Chief. And this thing is going to be filling the same role as the SU-17 in reality. But it has a Vulcan with 1028 rounds, which is an absolute metric shit ton. But that's very much welcome. Gonna be good for ground pounding. It's going to be looking at the armored target belt. It's better for air-to-air as well. Don't ask me why. And the main thing here is going to be your ground loadouts, because it has a lot of bombs and a lot of, well, ordnance in general. It also has the bullpups. But I don't know, most of you won't be running these. Most of you will be trying to grind this thing out for ground RB. For the guys that want to fly it in air RB, it is pretty maneuverable. It's not a saber, but it feels pretty snappy. The gun goes where you want it to go. And of course, the Vulcan with 1000 rounds, you can't really miss. Or you miss a lot, doesn't matter, you're still going to get 4 kills, because you can allot 250 rounds per kill, which is, I think, more than sufficient. We do have one skin, that's the one I'm running right here, because I really dislike ground camos. There you have it. This is brown with green. I prefer some grey. I don't like this green though, but you know, it is what it is. And next up is Germany. And Germany got basically dick all other than the R60 MKs, which are just R60Ms. They are a literal copy, they have a different name. But because of that, it's now 11.3. The Russian one is not, but this one does have a lot better missiles. But I guess it makes sense, because Germany doesn't really have a great top tier. Like the F4F is good, and the 21 bits are good, but they're kind of like just in between the Lecter radar missiles or the good radar missiles. So it makes sense, but it's kind of the USSR. And we have the Su-22 M3 as the squadron vehicle of today. Talk about Russia, they are next on the list. We got the Su-22 M3, and this thing will be largely the same to the Su-17. It's slightly heavier and it has some different loadouts. It's gonna be looking at the 6 R60s that you can carry, but you can also carry the 6 R60s with, of course, some rockets that I like to use in the head-ons. The same that I did in the Su-17 video, if you have seen it, and a lot of my kills in the head-on were just shooting these things off. Of course, that was back when pulse Dopplers were on the thing, and you only have 12 of the countermeasures, so you really need to be careful here if you want to fly this thing in Air RB. If you run into an EJ Kai, well, F4J, well, not gonna have a good time. You don't have the most amount of countermeasures. They can lock you up pretty easily, and you get that frontal airspan making you extra vulnerable. Unless, of course, you use the airspan to really side climb, stay behind your team, and just loiter around and then come in second row. Of course, totally workable, but I know that a lot of you guys are gonna use this thing to power ground it for ground RB. Rush in, get a few kills, ground kills or whatever, die and go to the next one. Perfectly viable, but it's not going to be a very great experience, I can tell you, and that's simply because of the forward airspan and the fact that the enemy has a lot of pulse Doppler radar missiles coming your way the second you are locked up. And now, especially with the AIM-7Fs, I'm not sure if this is going to be a very great thing to fly in Air RB. In ground RB, of course, it's going to be still decent, and that's what it's kind of made for. You still have the swing wing design, it's still an Su-17 essentially, it's just a little bit heavier. And then for the next one we have the Mk.27, and this thing again is basically the same as the one we already have. It's the same one as just a normal Mk.27. It has some different loadout options though, and again there's just too many of them. So you can look and you can see what's there, but in general it's going to be largely the same. And I'm going to be looking at some camos here. There is again none, and the Su-17 also had none. Mk.21S is going to be a little bit in between the Mk.21 PFM and the Mk.21 MF, kind of. They're not really the same as both, so I'm just gonna put it right there. But you have a little bit of a different loadout, and you got 3 radar missiles here at 9.7. The R3Rs, not the best missiles by any means, but of course some radar missiles at 9.7 never really harm anyone. And otherwise you're going to be looking at R3Ss, which are also not very amazing. But you also have to keep in mind you have some pretty good performance for a 9.7. So it might actually be pretty decent. In the end of the day, it's going to be a Mk.21. It's not a very noob-friendly plane. So if you are looking for a very nice pickup to start grinding in, you're probably going to be better off in the Su-7 and just rushing in and killing a few guys. I feel like the skill level for that is a little bit lower if you're looking for quick RP. But my real advice will be look at something a lower BR like the Su-11. Amazing plane, probably a lot more effective to learn Air RB in as well. But if you are looking for a ground pounder, Su-7 will be the most brain dead, so to speak. And the Mk.21S is going to be a little bit the same as the Mk.21 SPS that I did a video on last week. And that's going to be very similar. Very similar flight style, but you just miss the missiles that are as good as these. And that's it for Russia. Next up will be Great Britain. And the LF Mk.III Seafire was actually something I was kind of looking forward to. You're not going to be looking at any skins here, and the main problem with this thing will be it's 5.0 and it gets the same engine as the Mark V. So a little bit over tiered is probably not going to be very good. It's a Spitfire that's over tiered. Yeah, what else is new? Very normal, and we're going to be looking at some more over tiered Spitfire in the Israeli tree in a minute here. But other than that, Britain got absolutely nothing. At least it's something, I guess. Japan got absolutely dick as well. China got nothing. I'm terribly sorry, I lied. China actually got something. It's an LA-11, and the LA-11 is actually pretty sad because we got the LA-9 right here, which is already over tiered, and the LA-11 is the downgrade of the LA-9. Slightly worse engine and a gun less. So you're looking at a downgraded LA-9 that's at the BR that the LA-9 should be at. LA-9 is 5.3, 5.7 material at best. 6.0 it has no business. So the LA-11 is also one of those planes. That's probably not going to be very great. You do get the insane firepower. That is the, you guessed it, 23 millimeters. It's the same one as the one in the Russian tree, the premium one that some of you might have. Not the best plane. you can skip it. I would fly the LE9 over this one, even though this one is a lower BR. Italy got nothing. France, however, finally got something, the Mirage 5F. And the Mirage 5F is basically just the Mirage 3 that we already have with a little bit of extra fuel tanks. So now you can stay in the air for that little bit extra long. Other than that, not many differences, other than the ground loadout, and you lack the radar here, so you're only going to be looking at 2 of the normal missiles, and you're going to miss the chunk, as we call it, the very big Mk.III, the 530. That has that really good range, so you're only going to have 2 of these missiles, and the rest is going to be all strike fighting basically, because in the end it is in this line. Other than that, we have the Seafire here. I'm not able to see if this has any camos. I'm going to guess it doesn't. And then next up, this is the same plane as the one in Britain, by the way. Next up, you have the Vautour 2N, and this thing was supposed to be a little bit of an upgrade. This was supposed to get an all-flying tail like the 2B does. Unfortunately, right now in the files is the exact same flight model. If this gets changed, if this thing gets the all-flying tail like it is supposed to, it will start turning a little bit better. Make sure that you don't blow your wings off or whatever, because it's still a Vautour. So check the comments here in a few days. If it doesn't say anything, nothing got changed overall. But the main difference again will be the ordnance options. You're gonna look at 4 of these A20 Nords, which is great. You also got some other ground options now for some extra bit of ground pounding. And you have the guns, of course, so it's better than what we have right now. It's still a Vautour though. Keep that in mind. You are 9.0, you get a high airspan, but you also in the enemy team, you will be seeing planes like the Su-7 and now the Thunder Chief. So be careful of those. You are still a bomber, you are not much of a strike fighter. Well, technically it's a strike fighter, but you still handle like a bomber. Not gonna be the best pickup in the current meta, but the 4 Nords might be fun if you like that kind of playstyle. Sweden also got nothing this batch. And now the real reason most of you guys will be looking at this video, we are gonna be looking at Israel. Most of these things I'm not able to actually review for you. In terms of, do they have camos, what are the differences, but I do have the knowledge now because of the files that I have on my other screen right here, because I'm not going to be remembering all of this. We got the Spitfire Mark IV or Mark 9C. And you might think, is this thing good because it's 5.7? No, it's identical to the one we have at 4.3 in the Britain line. It's the exact same as this thing. Isn't that just a kick in the balls? 5.7, I can see that thing going down pretty quickly. The LF9 wise is just an LF9, not much to say there, it's just premium. The S199 is probably going to be one of the worst planes in the entire game. No climb rate, is basically a 109 without the engine. Overheats extremely fast, and you have mandatory gun pods. And once you stock, gonna have you a little bit more of a kick in the balls. Yeah, stock you're gonna be looking at 3 machine guns or 4 machine guns, and you need to unlock the 20 mils. With this absolutely horrendous performance, your engine will be blinking red before you are at the end of the runway. That's just how bad it is. Then we got the LF9 with the clipped wings. So differences between the normal LF9, not very massive, but the clipped wings are gonna make you turn a little bit less, bleed a little bit of extra speed, but you're gonna have a little bit more roll rate. So that's a trade-off. I would prefer the LF9 normal personally, because the roll rate increase does not warrant the amount of sacrifice that you will have in the other departments. P51 D20 NA, we all know it, no one flies it. Just fly the D10 if you have it. D5 and the D20 are very much similar. They're very, very slightly so different. Not much worth noting, however. Not a good plane. Don't fly this thing. You're better off flying this thing. Or you're not better off flying that thing. Your probably best bet is going to be the CW here. Otherwise, but you're going to have to go through these planes. So my real, if you are a free-to-play player, start with the S99 like you are supposed to. At least it's a low BR. Try to get to the 20 mils as fast as you can. Get this one and then start grinding these, because this thing at 5.7, you're not going to have a good time. Like, this thing is not good, but at least it gets something done. Then we got this absolute abomination of a plane. We got the Meteor NF13, which is basically just a normal Meteor. Now, the main problem we are going to be looking at here is the nose is a little bit longer, making the center of gravity shift forward a little bit, which is what you don't want to happen. And while the guns are so far apart that even with 800 meters convergence, people are going to fly in between your guns at a kilometer. It's absolutely obnoxiously bad how far these guns are apart, and you don't really have good roll rate because you don't have the clipped wings on this one. So I'm gonna bet on the fact that this thing isn't gonna be very good. I would just fly the normal Mark IV long wing over that, or just the short wing, or the Mark 8. And the Mark 8 we have right after it. Uragan, we all know. Most people don't like it, not me included. Used to be pretty decent, but right now it's 7.7 with planes like the Su-11s, with planes like the LA-200, all those kind of planes. This thing isn't very good anymore. Photo 2A is the exact same as the one that we have, and this one is also just a straight copy paste, but it has a few more ordnance options opposed to the 2A one. In reality, this is not a real tech tree in my opinion. It's a little bit of a rip-off. The only thing you want to be looking at here is the Kfir, but we will get there in a second. Mk.III 4A, absolute dogshit plane. And you're not even going to be getting the Nords here. On none of these planes you are going to have the Nords. And that's basically the redeeming factor of these, or that would be the redeeming factor of these three. This thing is the SMB, or the Super Mk.III B2, without the Nords essentially. And this thing also doesn't have the afterburner. It's the same as the French one, just again without the missile. You get the Kfir 2s, which aren't very bad. Oh wait, this one doesn't, this is the next one. This thing basically gets no air-to-air ordnance. It's going to be a very sad plane. I'd recommend you to skip this thing if you can. And most of you hopefully will be able to. It's an absolute horseshit plane. Don't recommend it. You have the Sambat, and it's kind of in the name. It's bad. It's basically Super Mk.III, but with Kfir 2s. Oh, Kfir 1s actually. So these are basically AIM-9Bs. Not very reliable, not very great. And then you got the SAR, or however you want to pronounce that. And unfortunately, this is just the same thing as that one, except your engine is going to produce even less power. And for everyone here that doesn't have this Super Mk.III right here, I will show you very quickly what I mean with it has no power. The SAR is going to have even less. So I'm going to be throttling up. Now this is like my VTEC kicks in. Afterburner for a good 4 seconds and we're going 3 kilometers an hour. Yeah. That is the reason you don't see these things in Arabi. It's an extremely bad plane. You lose a lot of speed very quickly. You got Nords, which is essentially the only redeeming part. It is decently maneuverable. But the retention on this thing is so piss poor that you are not going to be doing much in it. And especially if you then lack the missiles as well, not a good pickup. I think you get the idea here how slow this thing is. Keep in mind this thing is 9.0. So you're going to be fighting planes like the Mk.19s, Mk.21s, Sabres, Mk.15s in a down tier, which actually give you a run for the money. Not a very great pickup. If you're in the Dis-3, just fly the E-10 Dart. You're going to be much better off. Yeah, and this one is just even worse than that, so don't bother with this line basically. You want to be skipping these for the most part. F8 will probably be the best for you here to then start grinding into the rest of tier 6. But in reality, this tech tree feels a little bit like a rip-off. It feels like they made it as bad as possible, so you want to buy the A4E Premium. And then we reached the A4 Skyhawks. We got the A4H, the A4E Early, the A4N, and the A4E. The A4E Early, which will be identical to the one that we have in the US tech tree. And then we have the A4E, which is slightly so different, 40 kilograms heavier, slightly different engine settings, engine tuning, whatever you want to call it, largely the same plane. And of course you have the DEFRANs on all 4 of these. And then you get the A4H, which is 300 kilograms lighter. It's a little bit shorter, and you miss the main thing here, because these are all strike aircraft, of course, for ground RB, for sim ground, or whatever you want to fly them in. Only dumb ordnance, bombs, rockets, of course, things you are used to. A4E Early will have flares, 8.7, and you get the GBUs as well as AGM-62s. These are again the loadouts if you so desire to see them. And then we got the A4N, which is slightly so heavier and it has a stronger engine. But keep in mind you're at a 9.3 at this point, and at RB not gonna have a very great time on this thing at 9.3. Luckily you do have flares and you have a little bit better missiles. You got the AIM-9Ds, and in the end the main thing you want to be looking at here is the GBUs, the AGM-65s. These are of course the ones with the worst seeker head, but they are Mavericks nonetheless. And these are the ordnance options if you so desire to see them. You can only carry 3 of the bullpups opposed to the 5 that you can carry, of course, on the A3 early. And then we arrived at the Mirage 3 C. I don't know what letter that is, doesn't matter, the Israeli Mirage 3C. This will be just a Mirage 3C, as you already know it in the game. The only difference here, the main difference here, will be this here. It's a little bit problematic. You're only going to be looking at AIM-9Ds. You are losing the magics. You are also going down 0.3 and beyond. 10.0, this might actually be pretty decent, but it's going to be dependent on the matchmaker you are going to be receiving. If you get up tier to 10.3, 10.7, which is very likely, or even 11.0, which also very... No, it happens ever so often, pretty often, more than often, basically every game. You are going to be missing the magics. You do get the chunk here, the big missile, the 530, both the IR version as well as the radar version. It's going to be personal preference. I use the IR one, but now with the new flares, I'm not sure what I should run. But that's basically it. It's a Mirage 3C at a low BR, but it loses the magics. Phantom F4E, we all know this thing. We all know this. It's the same as everywhere, except this one has AIM-9Ps instead of the AIM-9Js. Then we have the Nasher. It's basically Mirage 5F, basically identical, but again, you are going to be losing your magics, AIM-9Gs and Kfirs. And now we reach the Kfir C.7. If I mispronounce that, I'm terribly sorry, but unfortunately I don't speak Hebrew. So the Kfir is quite a plane. I just flew it. The flight performance is absolutely nuts. Super fast accel, decent turn, holds the speed well at high speed, not so much at lower speed. You can dogfight most guys. The rudder is a little bit fucky, and it has that Mirage syndrome at lower speeds where you try to aim the guns and your plane goes all over the place. That's still the same. This thing doesn't feel very different to a Mirage, other than the power that it has. It has an absolute bonkers engine with almost the same output as the F-104S when it starts getting up to speed. And of course the canards, and you will do about 1450 on the deck, and then you start going into that red line. Keep in mind, the acceleration is too fast for its own good, while the performance is absolutely nuts. Keep in mind, you only have Aidens, and they are just the same as the one on the Mirage, and you only have 4 AIM-9Gs, and keep in mind you are at 11.3. You don't have radar missiles. Your radar itself isn't very good. I have it turned off most of the time to just eliminate my radar profile. In general, this thing is an absolutely insane plane in the wrong meta. 1v1 this thing is extremely fucking good. Like really, really good. Outside of that, in the team game, it's going to be lacking. It's one of those planes you want to fly into a custom battle and just bully people with. It's a great plane, but the weapon platform, not so much. AIM-9Gs and Aidens are just not going to be cutting it, not at the current 11.3 age. I'm suspecting this thing to go down in BR. It's going to be very skill intensive to fly. It will be coming down to your aim, your positioning, knowing when to strike, knowing who to go for, and just all around having a lot of experience and being good with that experience at top tier. This is not going to be a plane that's going to be very great for the average player. I'm sorry to say it, but it's an insane fun plane to fly in a sense, because you have all the performance in the world, the acceleration, you leave everything in the dust. You keep your speed well at 1400 kilometers an hour. You can do a 180 by stamping on the elevator, and you will lose like 200 kilometers an hour, which is nuts. But again, Aidens and AIM-9G, so you are gonna struggle a little bit here. And for the overview itself of this patch, not much has changed, other than the fact that we have new fire effects, we got new smoke effects for the missiles as well. And the main thing that I'm not very happy with, we have some sim maps in the rotation now. I might see if we can see them right here. They are absolutely enormous, like this one. And there's a little problem with it. First of all, if the entire enemy team is dead, the tickets will not go down, so you will have to play the entire 25 minutes or till one of the teams reaches 0 score. And the maps are absolutely enormous. And a lot of the times you will get a 6v6 map and then you will not find anyone. Not the best addition. If this is just a playtest to see if these maps work, if they fit in the rotation, then I got no problems with these. At top tier is also not a bad addition because the maps were simply way too small. But when I start getting these maps at 2.3, Yeah, that's they're a little bit too big for that. They should be exclusive to top tier jets. But you know, I hope this gets fine-tuned. Not a bad addition per se, but it's definitely gonna need some work before this starts working out. Might be good for the future, as the maps are small, and maybe we start seeing some enduring confrontation as well. Looking forward to that, but we will see. Hope this was helpful. Hope you enjoyed it. Well, not very enjoyable. Hope it was helpful. And we'll see you all tomorrow with either a Kfir or maybe a Thunder Chief video. Not entirely sure yet. Probably gonna be the Kfir C.7. See you all in the next one, and good luck grinding.